McLean. Deck Coach's Corner.
You're listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast with your host, Andy Plymer.
For someone to explain.
Bringing you up-to-date coaching concepts from the world of rugby. Sharing ideas to make the game better.
All right, welcome to episode number 52 of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. I'm your host, Andy Plymer, and this episode is the second of a series on coaches involved in the new Major League Rugby competition starting up in the US for 2018. Joining me today is Nate Osborne. Nate originally hails from Queanbeyan in Australia, where he played a lot of his rugby in Canberra as part of the Brumby Runners. After moving to the US, he's had coaching roles with Metropolis RFC in Minnesota, the USA Eagles as backs coach for the 2015 Rugby World Cup, and was recently named as the head coach for NOLA Gold, based out of New Orleans. It's a pleasure to have him on the show, so welcome, Nate.
Thanks, mate. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
Excited, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So you're, we're just talking a bit there, you're getting ready to make the move down to New Orleans?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, I own a gym in Minnesota, so getting all that stuff squared away before we make the trip as a family to move down to New Orleans and start the new adventure as a full-time rugby coach, mate. So
sweet.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think I'm excited about it. My wife's excited to see something different, and the girls are, in between about missing their friends and family, but they're excited to see some sunshine year round, which would be nice.
God. Yeah. So, we're also just saying you're just bailing right when it's going to start getting nasty winter-wise. So no backyard rink in New Orleans?
No, mate. We do have one here the girls love.
Yeah.
They actually embrace it.
I do the same. It's unreal.
I'm the opposite. I can go months of the year without letting fresh air touch my skin. I go garage to garage.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
I've been here for 10 years, and I need to embrace it. But I'm happy to be getting out and getting some sun for sure.
Awesome. All right, so we touched a bit on your playing background. What was a bit more detail there? Apart from Queanbeyan being one of the most difficult names to spell of Australian towns, you did most of your footy there.
Yeah, I grew up there. I played my whole life there. My old man was a rugby league coach, so we kind of travelled around a little bit. He coached in Woy and Gosford and Umina, and then he came back and he was doing the with Canberra Raiders, so that's why we moved back to Queanbeyan. He grew up my mum and dad both from Queanbeyan, so we moved back to Queanbeyan. He did the Raiders for a little bit and then jumped over to the Queanbeyan Blues. So spent a lot of time there before moving into more of a rugby school at St Edmunds, and from there I still played both, played league and union, as most kids in Australia do, and then I made the Australian schoolboys team, which kind of propelled me more towards sticking with union and kind of chasing that avenue rather than playing much league. So that's the main reason I made the switch, and I haven't played a game of league since, really. So it's been a good move.
Yeah, sweet.
It's taking me far.
Yeah, sweet. And who like you would have had some Aussie schoolboys? There would have been some pretty solid players in that group. Who were some of the
we had a cracking team. We had in '98 we had George Smith, Dave Lyons. Like you can just go through the whole team, and it's just Tim Donnelly. We had Paul Warwick, Junior Palasasa. We just had a lot of those guys went on to play high level Super Rugby and Wallabies. Dan Heenan. So it was a great experience to be on a team like that. And we went on a 2-month trip of Canada first. Actually, we went to Canada, and then we went to England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, and played test matches in all those against the schools. So it was a great experience.
Must have been terrible.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough to finish school and be an 18-year-old kid and get a 2-month all expenses paid by Australian Rugby to travel around with these great, young rugby players. So
epic.
It was definitely a cool spot to be in.
Yeah, and then the Brumbies, the Brumby Runners, was Eddie Jones coaching the Brumbies then? You would have been around some pretty good coaches at that time?
Yeah, it was Nusafora just took over from Eddie. I went from school. I ended up going down to Randwick and played at Randwick for 2 years. And then went to Southern Districts for 2 years.
Right.
So played in the Shoot Shield there, and then came back to Canberra and was with East in Canberra. I left Queanbeyan and went to East, which was a talking point. But at the time, East had a really good squad, and like Matty Giddo and my brother Jeremy was a great rugby player as well. So we had a really good group of Queanbeyan Eddie's boys that were playing there. So it was a good move for me to just go to somewhere where I knew everybody, and it was a great club, and I enjoyed my time there at East as well.
Sweet. And what about coaching? What did your first kind of coaching experiences look like in those early days?
So with I used to help out a lot with like the backs and stuff as I got older.
Mm-hmm.
And then I took over as the development officer for the club. So I used to go to schools and do a lot of coaching for the schools, which I loved. I loved that job of, so I was training full time basically, and the work on the side was a bit of personal training and going to schools and teaching rugby. So it was a pretty cool cruisy gig that I had that it was, I really enjoyed it. It was, so that was like kind of my first taste of it. And like I said, in the bit before, my old man was a coach his whole life, so a player and coach his whole life. So I grew up around coaching. I grew up in the locker rooms with my dad. I grew up going to training with the first grade teams at the league clubs that he was coaching when I was really young, and learned a lot from him and learned a lot from those experiences as well of what to do and what not to do. And then he actually ended up taking over as a union coach for East in the last year I was at East. So he did that for a couple of years. So it was good to play under him with my brother, and it was good he was like one of those main influences that, if you got a dad that's a coach, you can always see how to watch the games and stuff like that. He'd always show us little bits and pieces and show us all this stuff. So it was definitely an advantage for me and my brother to have that in our house,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And, you're never far away from just having a conversation about something that's come up and tapping in on that experience for sure.
Yeah.
What's your coaching philosophy look like now? Like if someone was to ask you, to write it down, day one of your level 3, what's your coaching philosophy? What would you put down?
I think the main thing with me as I've got older as a coach is to be more player driven and let players take more ownership of what they're doing on the field. I think when you first start coaching, it's really hard to let go of that playing philosophy that you want everything to be perfect. Where I think if you can, it's not really coaching if you're not teaching in a sense. So if someone's making a mistake, then you show them why and how, and then from there, hopefully they don't make that mistake again, so they become better rugby players, and you get a better outcome from what you're trying to do with your team. So I think that's probably my main philosophy now, is that I really empower the players to have a lot of power in terms of what they're doing on the field and what they're seeing. I don't think it's constructive to really script everything all the way down to the last second anymore, where I sort of went through a phase of really being like that, and I think that sort of changed over time to be more player driven, and that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Cool, sweet. And you like me did a little while as a player coach. Pretty harsh. It's a tough gig, that one, to separate the emotions of a player and then try to be a level-headed coach. I know I had some colossal failures in that regard. If someone was to come up to you and say, "Look, I'm going to be a player coach," what would be some advice you'd give them?
I think just what I touched on. You've got to separate yourself from the player side of things, and you've got to really empower people around you to help them understand what you're trying to do. It's really easy when you're on the field to try and take control of everything, and when you first step away, you want to still have that control, and you want to, like I said, you want to script everything to the last second so that people can do what you want to do. I think when you're a player coach, like you said, your emotions can get the better of you. You can start to focus too much on your own game and not worry about everybody else, or vice versa, worry about everybody else and not worry about your own game. So it's got to be one of those things where you have enough confidence and understanding of what everybody else around you can bring to the table, and then empowering them to help you to achieve your goal.
All right, well, on to the MLR. What's it's obviously pretty exciting times right now. What are your hopes for the MLR as the first season starts next year and moving forward from that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about it. I think of all the pro rugby leagues that have tried to start up in America, this is definitely the one that I heard about and was like, I want to be involved. I think that this is done right. I think having club-based teams, which, not necessarily are the club, but they have a spin-off of an already existing club with one owner of each team and a GM and coaching staffs that can really understand when you're bringing in players, you're understanding what you want to try and do on the field. So it's exciting for that. I think in the first year, we want to put a product on the field that people want to watch. And that's pretty easy to say. And I know that that's a kind of cliche thing to say, but if we're not playing, if the games are 70-0 every week, or, it's not going to do anything for the league. It's not going to do anything for the fan base if they're going to be watching those things. So in terms of what we're trying to do is really take guys that haven't been put into an environment where they get to train full time and break down other teams' film and work on their own games and work on their mistakes to make them better rugby players. And I got no doubt that that'll increase that performance on the field week in, week out. So that's kind of the main thing I'm excited about.
Yeah,
day-to-day stuff with the boys.
Yeah, and some pretty sweet news too that there's with CBS announcing they're going to be doing game of the week and then the semis and finals. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the early days of NRC in Australia.
Right.
There was that initial kind of bit of TV, bit of online kind of streaming stuff, but then now it's grown into a really good. I hate saying product about rugby, but it's grown into a really nice product, I suppose.
It has, mate. Yeah, I watch a bit of the NRC, and I watched it in the early days as well, and it's a lot better now than it was. And it can even be as simple as that the film, the games are filmed right, and the lighting on the field's good, and there's actually people in the stands watching it, and you've got good commentators that understand what they're talking about. So I think the CBS deal is fantastic. I mean, I don't think anyone could say anything other than that. It's great, and I think that's the key to those is that they're going to do it right. They signed a multi-year deal. We want to be around for a long time. So if we can work hand in hand with each other to try and put the best product out there for people, then that's key. I think people that know rugby and will watch it because people who want to know. But if you are just flicking through the channels and you're an NFL fan and all of a sudden you stumble across this game you've never seen before, the quality of the product needs to be there. Otherwise, it can't just be a random one camera that you get at club rugby or a live stream kind of thing. It's got to be, different angles, commentators, and high level, play on the field as well.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and speaking of NRC, you must be stoked that the Vikings are in the final there.
Yeah, mate, they're doing well.
Yeah, they were always thereabouts, weren't they? And they've really kicked on this year. They're number 8's unreal.
Yeah, the Canberra competition itself got really, really strong in the early 2000s when the Brumbies decided that every player that was contracted with them or even in their training groups or even in just being looked at by them had to come to Canberra and play.
Yeah.
So that they had like hands-on and got to see week in, week out players playing against high-quality teams. So, that Canberra Vikings team has been good for a little while from that, based on that. And then I know that they're doing like a throwback Canberra Kookaburras jersey for the final and stuff. So I think they're building a bit of excitement in there. I know they're saying it's free tickets too. I saw online that you can just turn up and watch it for free. So
that's huge.
I think it'll be it's great for the local competition to have their players playing at that level, and it's great for the Brumbies to be able to see those guys play at a high level. And it's also, I think it's helping the Wallabies as well.
Yeah,
I think that,
no doubt.
Their players getting better as well.
My goodness, the amount of game time that those guys are getting now, when 4 years ago they'd finished Super Rugby and that's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, on to NOLA. What's for those who don't know, what's the rugby landscape look like in New Orleans?
It's good. It's actually really strong. They've got some really good high school programs. They've got some really good college programs like LSU and other programs down there. And then the local club, New Orleans RFC, is a strong club as well. And they've won a couple of Division II championships, national championships. They've been to the Final Four and made the final in the D1 national championships. So, I mean, there's already a good base of young talent that's going to be streaming into the NOLA Gold side. So, in terms of the landscape down there, I think it's great. When I've been down there, they've definitely got a lot of stuff going on, and it's only going to grow from us putting more people out there and doing what we should be doing for our community by going out and doing clinics and going to high schools and going to colleges and trying to raise the level of everybody. And giving everybody a goal to be a NOLA Gold rugby player when they grow up, So
that's sweet. Yeah, no, it's definitely exciting. And how's the prep going so far? Like, no doubt you've pretty much got the roster like pretty locked in by now. With that in mind? What do you think are some of the key areas you need to get right early for a new competition like this?
So I mean, our squad's pretty much set. Like we're pretty much we've got the squad we want. We put together a really, really good squad. I know we've now announced a few, really good players, and there's more to come. I think for us early on in a competition like this, when you're bringing guys in from kind of all over the country, and a lot have played together in different, like some played in the pro rugby together, some have played for the Eagles together, some have played for the Canadian national team together, but you got to try and gel that team as quickly as you can. And I think the biggest key for us early, especially, is for our forwards to work on their scrum and to be a unit in their scrum, and for our backs to get on the same page. So our ball runners and ball carriers in the back line to know where they're running and what lines they want to do and who they're trying to attack, and our playmakers getting their reads based on that as well. So that's kind of the biggest keys for those. And then, coming together, it seems like when you look at it, we've got a lot of time. Like we start January 3rd. We have a game on the 20th against Capital Selects, which will, give us a bit of an indication of kind of just to where we are for that first little, phase of our preseason. We've broken our preseason into 3 phases. That's our first phase is, getting a bunch of work in, understanding what we're trying to do. And then the second phase is building off the back of that. Okay, what did we do well? What did we do poorly? How do we need to be better for the 24th against Houston, which is that next phase of training. So really we've got about 7 weeks where we need to get everybody on the same page, understanding exactly what we're trying to do in terms of our structures, defense and our attack shape, and how, why, when and where we're trying to do everything. That's kind of my role, is to make sure that we're doing that. And at the moment I'm going through the preseason schedule and putting that all out so that I can just really look at it and say, okay, do we have enough of this? Do we have enough of this? Do we have too much of this, so that we can cut some of this, so that we can understand that we cover all of our bases going into that 24th, and we feel really good and confident about, playing good rugby and winning some games.
Yeah, sweet. Okay. And what, I probably know the answer to this, but what's your preferred style of play and attack? And how do you build that up over that time period?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an attack. I'm a running rugby guy, like an old school Australian. I like to throw the ball around, and I like to put people in positions to do that. But you can't do that if you don't win the middle. So there's a big push for being physical in the middle. So we've got to get over the gain line, and we've got to create a quick ball. If we don't do that, then there's no point us playing wide rugby. So that's going to be the biggest thing for us is our breakdown, how good we are at the breakdown, so that we can get quick ball, and how good we are at getting over the gain line and really chopping defensive lines, picking out who we're trying to get into breakdowns, picking out where the spaces are and who we're trying to hold, and given the defense different looks with different layers that they have to kind of think about who they're defending, so that, take away a little bit of their line speed by them being a little bit hesitant of who they're supposed to take. But that's kind of all in all, that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. And you slowly build that over time, obviously.
Yep. So we'll put in our first layer of attack, pretty early. Then we'll start adding our second, and our third. We'll start getting our playmakers more involved of what they're seeing. One thing at every breakdown, we want to have at least 4 options off every breakdown. So if our playmakers aren't seeing the 4 options, the 3 to 4 options off every breakdown, then there's someone not doing their job, or there's something going on that we're not doing right. And that might be as simple as not getting over the game line. But it might also be somebody is going to a dead ruck that they don't need to go to. So it's really a matter of like layering it bit by bit, so that you end up with the whole overall picture of what we're trying to do in our attack. So yeah.
Cool. All right, last couple of questions before we wrap it up. What was in your early days of coaching? What's one of the biggest mistakes you've made as a coach, and how did you go about fixing it?
Yeah, I think, mate, we touched on it before. I think over structure and taking too much control away from the players was probably my biggest mistake, because you realise pretty quickly that you can draw up the perfect game plan, and then somebody bashes you, and that game plan becomes out the window. And how do you react to that? So that's kind of been my early on, especially when I went from player to just coach. That was when I found it the most difficult. It was only a short amount of time, but I realised pretty quickly. But it was a mistake that I made that was a mistake. So.
Yeah, no, it was definitely one of mine. A list of many that I made. That would be up the top for sure. All right, last one. You were backs coach for the USA Eagles for the Rugby World Cup in 2015. That must have been a pretty awesome experience. What was some of the highlights of that time?
Mate, it was great. I think every kid, especially in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, England, you grow up wanting to go to a World Cup. Obviously when you're a kid, you want to be a player.
Yeah.
But then, once that fades away, then the next step is to be a coach. So it was, literally a dream come true to be able to go to a World Cup and be in team meetings and training sessions and have a say on how we're trying to, win games at a World Cup is, a dream come true. And it was definitely a highlight of my, not just coaching, but my rugby life. I loved every second of it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, that would have been sick. All right. We always end the show with the same final 4 questions.
Sure.
When you were a kid growing up in Australia, who was one of your favourite player or players that you kind of looked up to and pretended to be in the backyard against your brother?
Yeah, mate. My favourite player is Carlos Spencer. I love Carlos Spencer.
Right,
I love his off the cuff. Yeah, I love his off the cuff kind of rugby, and he's just one guy that you just never knew what he was going to do. Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, he pulled off whatever he was doing, whether it was kicking over his head or whether it was throwing a dummy, whatever it was doing.
Or throwing intercepts to Sterling Mortlock.
Or throwing, even those were good, mate. And he was one of those guys that he threw the intercept and then he'd just go back and try the same play again.
Yeah,
like he just had no conscience, mate.
No.
Like an axe murderer. I loved Carlos Spencer. So
yeah,
great.
No, he's pretty awesome for sure. And what about now? Who are some of the high profile players you like watching run around?
I like Israel Folau a lot.
Yeah.
I think he adds a huge attacking threat from the back, and I think that's what's kind of made the Wallabies what they are right now. Is if you don't have that from the back, somebody that can insert in different spots and come from anywhere and score tries like he does, then you're pushing the crap uphill with playing the All Blacks and stuff. So definitely like an Israel Folau sort of guy is I like a lot, but I also like the toughness of like Owen Farrell and those sort of guys as well.
For sure.
I like the gritty number 10 that great kicking game, great passing game, but also get in there and mix it up with the big boys in defence. I like those sort of guys as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think Izzy, if he stays fit and sticks around the game for this World Cup and a bit more, he could go down as one of the greats for sure. He's a try-scoring machine.
Yeah, he's very good.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, and what about coaches? Who's a high-profile coach you like what they do and look up to?
I love Eddie Jones.
Yeah.
I like his demeanour. I like his coaching style. I've spent some time with him, and he definitely is one of those guys that gets the best out of his players. And he's also one of those guys who gives the players a lot of responsibility as well. So I really like the style of Eddie Jones's coaching.
Yeah, I'd love to have a chat with him. If you talk about coaching evolution, there it is right there. He had a pretty miserable time at Queensland after the Wallabies gig. Had massive success with the Brumbies and Australia, then a really rough trot at Queensland, but then kind of seems to reinvent himself every few years. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, for sure. He's great.
And what about grassroots coach in your community? Last question: who deserves a shout out?
Mate, I think guys like Sean Lindersmith is a guy that was like an Eagles manager. He did a lot of stuff in San Diego. He moved his life to Minnesota recently, the last year, and took over Minnesota Youth Rugby.
Wow.
And he's been doing a great job. And for somebody to come into a community that no one really knows, and he had a bit of pushback early on with some of the stuff he wanted to do, but he just stuck to his guns. And now, the youth program in Minnesota has gone great. And I think he's definitely a guy. I think guys like Rob Holder, who took over from me at Metropolis, who was running the Spearhead Rugby Academy before that, has done a great job with those guys. So I think those two guys around here definitely are guys that I think are doing really great jobs in their positions, what they're doing.
Cool, awesome. Great talking to you, Nate, and really looking forward to MLR kicking off like everyone else, and can't wait to see how NOLA Gold get on, and want to wish you all the best for that, and safe travels moving the family down there, and thanks again for giving up your time for coming on the show.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Perfect. All right. Cheers. David Williams is the head coach of the Glendale Raptors. Originally from England, he played for both the USA Eagles 7s and 15s teams. Between 2006 and 2015, David was the head strength coach for USA Rugby Men's national teams and skill and assistant coach for the men's 7s teams for some of that time. He was assistant coach for the Denver Stampede in the PRO Rugby competition, and they were the winners of the 2016 season. He's been the head coach of the Glendale Raptors since then, and it's a pleasure to have him on the show. So welcome, David.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. So, pretty exciting times with MLR approaching. We'll get into that in a minute. But what's a bit of a backstory as you as a player and then transitioning into your coaching career?
So I grew up in Bath in England. Then went to University of Exeter and came straight over here to go to grad school. And then I was fortunate enough to play for the Boston Irish Wolfhounds. So won a couple of national championships with them.
Yeah.
And then I was actually working for an AHL hockey team. And then they had the lockout at the NHL, so I got moved to Chicago, and that's where I started working as the head strength and conditioning coach and player as well. And then transitioned to full-time strength and conditioning coach for USA Rugby for 10 years. And then got let go of that job and then moved straight into the assistant head coaching job for the PRO Rugby here in Denver for the Denver Stampede.
Mm-hmm.
Lucky enough to win that the first year. That went bust. And then from there, I've been with Glendale for the last year and a bit now. I was with Glendale for the last kind of 7 or 8 years, and I wasn't travelling through USA Rugby. And so it's been a great transition. The lads have been really good for me, and I think we've learned a lot and really progressing on now to this new MLR competition, which I think is going to be phenomenal for players, coaches, and obviously for the national team moving forward as well.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of excitement about the MLR, and rightfully so. I think all the talk is super positive, and it's a real collective approach to it. How do you feel about that? With from a coaching standpoint, obviously you want to win, but the fact that MLR needs to succeed really, so it's all in for that to happen, right?
Oh, I think it has to be. And obviously I know the other coaches pretty well. I mean, I don't know the Utah coach, but I know all the other coaches, and they're really behind it. I think this individual ownership, not having a draft, just basically having a salary cap and going out and getting the players that you want, which you feel that you need to progress your team, is the best way forward. I think we've seen that with other leagues around the world, and I think that's the best kind of model moving forward.
Yeah.
Maybe there might be a draft in the future, as with other US sports, but I think at the moment, there's more than enough players to go around. Obviously at Glendale, we're fortunate we've had a pretty successful program for the last 4 or 5 years, and I've just been very lucky to kind of add to players to that, and we've had a couple of good seasons leading up to the MLR.
Cool, and you touched on the success of Glendale in last season's Pro Rugby. What were some of the things you feel as a group that you really got it right and helped to go towards that success?
Well, a lot of it was the culture we set. Myself and Pete Borlase, who used to play for Canterbury and for Munster, we were the main lead coaches for the team, and it was just a training environment that we demanded of the players, the accountability, and I think I brought that along to the Glendale team. Obviously, it wasn't Glendale who played in the Pro League; it was a different team, but the large majority of those players have stuck around Denver and now playing for Glendale and Infinity Park, and they see the need, to keep progressing, keep winning, and keep bringing different players in.
Yeah, apologies, it was Denver, right? Yeah, cool. And it's an interesting background that you're a strength and conditioning coach, but also a head coach. That's a pretty unique combination. What do you think some of the things that you can grab from S&C that transfer nicely into your rugby head coaching role?
Well, I think, I've been very fortunate in my career to go through a fair few number of head coaches, so I can take a lot of positives out of that and kind of form my own kind of coaching philosophy. I was a skills coach for the Sevens team for quite a few years, so I kind of pride myself on that. I think it's just now, obviously, the way the rugby's going, the physicality side of it, the collision side of it, the speed and fitness, repeated collisions, that I can kind of set the standard in the gym. I know how the players feel every day because I see them. I've got a great assistant coach in Kieran Browner. He does a great job with the forwards, and I think it's just the environment we set, and that a lot of that goes with how you set the strength and conditioning standards. What I demand of the players in the gym, and obviously with their training outside of kind of the rugby per se. The boys really buy into that. I think that's why we see the results that we get on the pitch. And then obviously alongside of that is having a very sound fundamental game plan that isn't overcomplicated, which the players buy into and they can easily adapt within a structured environment and play unstructured rugby.
Yeah, so I was going to touch on that. Do you feel that moving into this MLR inaugural season, that there's some of the things that you really want to get right early?
Oh, totally. And I think, we've been lucky that we've had a couple of seasons under our belt already to iron out some of the kinks, whether that be the style of play I see with the players, whether that's different players coming in and coming out, and then just really setting the standard, with our pre-season. With the weather we have here as well, we can't play as early as other clubs, and I'm absolutely fine with that. We'll start our pre-season a little bit later than other clubs, but the boys are all ripping into their off-season already, and they're really looking forward to this, increased standard we're going to play next spring.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And how are you going about monitoring the workload? Do you have GPS, RPE, wellness, that kind of stuff? And
I'm not a big believer in wellness. Yeah. As in regards to the questionnaires, because I think players just tick boxes and don't really care. And to be honest, and it's really, I feel that it's really up to the coaches to speak to the players.
Yeah.
We haven't got a large squad of players, so half our team are part timers, so they've got their careers and families, which is great. So it's up to me to speak to the full timers, kind of get a gauge of where they are in the mornings. If they're having issues, then I need to speak to them, pull them out. Alter their training, and I can do that because obviously, I'm also the strength coach and then the head coach as well. And then we do have GPS. We use Catapult at the moment, and we may be moving up to Mac Lloyd for a bit more of a live feature. Our players really buy into that. They get feedback after every single session, especially the national team players, where those metrics are so big and so huge for that international game. And obviously, the more we can train at a higher speed, then we're going to get to our game plan a lot quicker, and that's going to lead into points, and then obviously more success moving forward.
Yeah, and I think if you do get to that live monitoring setup, that's going to be massive to be able to make the changes on the training field as you see fit. If a group's underperforming or not hitting the workload that you set, you can make the changes straight away.
I think it's huge, and the boys buy into that. I mean, they know what I expect. And I expect energy from the players every single session. And if I'm not getting it, there's obviously a reason why. But if it's just a pure lack of effort, and you can pinpoint certain individuals, and you can see that in the film, but it's much better if you can see it live and change it, and then offer a reason why, and then obviously that translates into your game plan and guys hitting their spots and just being more efficient, more accurate in the game plan and how they want to play the game, because they all want to play for the national team. They all want to go on. So why aren't we training, in that methodology? Yeah,
for sure, no doubt. What's your favourite area of the game to coach, and if someone was to come along and see you coach that, what are some of the things they're going to see?
Well, I need to say defence because I'm going on the November tour. Of
course.
Yes, I'm just off to Germany and Georgia. I'm leaving Friday, actually.
Sweet.
So I definitely enjoy the physicality side of the game. I started off as a scrum half. I played there, all of my career, I should say.
Yeah. So you got to tell people when to tackle.
Exactly, and how to tackle.
Yeah, exactly.
Back a little bit, but I think now the nines role is very different from what it was when I played, and it's just they've got to be the voice still, but they also have to add that physicality when they need to jump in the line, and make their tackles and then get back in their sets and go from there.
And how do you go about managing the amount of contact that players have in the week leading up to a game?
So I'm pretty structured in my weeks. There's definitely Tuesdays will be my contact day, but I'm very set and going, right, guys, we've got either 5 minutes of this or 5 minutes of that. We're not just going to go, hey, we're going to do contacts for an hour. Yeah. I'm very set, and if it doesn't go right, then I won't just go longer for the sake of it. Like that with all my trainings. If I give guys a weekend off or a few days off, I will stick to that. I'm very structured in that way, and I think the players definitely buy into that, and they appreciate that if they're told something, then I stick to it. Yeah. I'm not going to chop and change just because of a victory or a loss. We will change that when the appropriate time is. But I think you have to say what you mean and mean what you say. And I think the players buy into that. There's more player welfare around that. Obviously, with this, the WTP, the weekly tactical periodization, there's many different ways to skin a cat. And I listened to a couple of Eddie Jones's videos and how he sets up his weeks, and how we can change it slightly moving forward. I think it's all very individual to your team and to your players, and a lot of it is how much have you put into them during pre-season. What are the loads they can handle? And that's only going to be more beneficial to me and my assistant coach moving forward. But it's much more beneficial for the players if they're built up, they know exactly what they're doing and how much they can achieve in a week.
Yeah, and I think knowing your opposition too, week by week as well, which game's going to be a real barn burner, and which one's you might be able to get some guys from the bench a bit more playing time, etc.
Well, even this season, we've just started our under-20s academies, and I had 3 18-year-olds playing for us this year.
That's great.
It's phenomenal for them and for us and as a club in general, because they know that if they're good enough, they're old enough, and it's as simple as that. I mean, look at England, how they brought on the 2 Curry brothers down in Argentina. Hadn't played much Premiership rugby, and they're just thrown straight into international scene against a full international Argentinian side, same as Nathan Earl. I think that we can follow that model in this country, and I think we need to. And I think those younger players have to have the voice, and they know that they're good enough to play at the higher levels. And also a lot more competition for the guys who think they're kind of set in stone in the team, and they get pushed out if they don't play very well.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, last question before we go to the final questions. You've also had a bit of sevens experience as well, coaching sevens. What are some of your big transfers from that experience to the 15s game?
Oh, it's just the skill and the speed. That's as simple as that. I mean, I played sevens a little bit. I mean, I was lucky to play in Hong Kong. It was just phenomenal. I wasn't the quickest player, so I'm actually surprised they picked me. But I think the sevens game is evolving. And I think they are getting more physical, but the 15s game is where it is these days. It always will be, I think. And it's great admiration for what the US team have done in the last couple of years. And they finished second in the Silicon Valley Sevens this weekend. They're bringing through a lot of good players. And the more we can send, we sent a couple of players down there already. And I hope we can support them moving forward. I think the biggest takeaway from sevens is that speed and accuracy. Especially at that breakdown point. It's not as physical as 15s, obviously, because the players aren't as big. But I still think that the more physical, the more accurate you are at that breakdown point. And then obviously the catch pass skills have to be just on point the entire time. Otherwise, you simply will not score many points and you will lose games.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, these are quick ones with the MLR series that we're putting together. So we always end the show with the same final 4 questions. When you were a kid growing up in Bath, who was one of the players that you really looked up to and admired?
Probably Richard Hill, the scrum half.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah. He was awesome. So I used to go down to the rec and watch as often as I could. Just sit on my old man's shoulders and watch away. It was awesome.
That's great, cool. And what about now? Who are some of the players going around that you like watching on the international scene?
I think Bowden Barrett. I think he's a phenomenal player. I think Owen Farrell, just what he brings to every team he plays for, whether that's Saracens, who I've got a huge amount of admiration for, England, and then obviously the British Lions this past summer. I think he's a phenomenal player. And obviously you need a set piece, and I think the big boys up front, they never get enough credit, but they're the ones who win every single game of rugby. Simple as that.
Yeah, great. Awesome. And what about coaches? Who's a high-profile coach you like what they do and get inspired from?
I think Eddie Jones. I've actually met him a few times and had some interesting conversation with him. So he's really good. And then Mark McCall. I think what he's done with Saracens, he's been there a long time. The changes he's made there, the players he's brought in, the culture he's brought in, and how every single player has just adapted to that environment so well. And that's why they're the best team in Europe and arguably the best team in the world.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's amazing in a pretty short period of time what that club's become. It's incredible. And what about? Sorry, go.
Who are there as well? Obviously, there are quite a few US players. They had 5 at one point, and obviously Chris Wiles has been there for a long time. And he is such a good bloke, both on and off the pitch. And he's getting old now, but he still charges around, scores tries, and he's great for them.
Great, awesome. And what about someone in the grassroots coaching community that you feel deserves a shout out?
I mean, I'm pretty biased. I think my assistant coach does pretty well for himself, Kieran Browner.
Yeah.
He's gone out. He was the liaison officer for England when they trained here at Glendale, and he stayed in contact with Graham Roundtree, and he kind of mentors him. I think a lot of the age grade coaches for USA Rugby. And obviously now I'm going on tour with Greg McWilliams and Sean Pittman. I think, and then obviously all the MLR coaches as well. I mean, it's the first time that the majority of them have coached at a professional level. So day in, day out, speaking to the players. So that's going to be, great for them, and I think great for USA Rugby moving forward.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, that's great, David. Thanks very much. It's a short and sweet one, but it's a great one for listeners, no doubt. And I think everyone, especially in North America, is super excited about the MLR, and we'll definitely be keeping an eye on Glendale during that tournament. So thanks again for giving up your time.
Really appreciate it. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, no worries. Cheers.
All right, cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review via iTunes and keep listening for the next episode. You can also follow us on Twitter at RugbyCoachSCNR or via the website at therugbycoachescorner.com. Until next time, keep sharing ideas to make the game better.